Hey everybody, welcome outside Ohio Stadium. It is Big Ten football season finally. Ohio State back on the field. They got a 52-17 win over Nebraska. An easy cover for those of you keeping track of such things. And first kind of look at the potential for this team. Had that feel of a lot of openers, even though it's mid-October and it's chilly out here, Big Ten weather. You know, you could tell that there was some rust for the Buckeyes, but they kicked that off by the second half, cruised to an easy win. First impressions, Tim.
Just like you just put it, I mean, kind of a sloppy, if that's the right term, or kind of getting your feet under you kind of start for the defense, which I totally expected with 8 new starters out there. They finally did get their act together, but, you know, the Nebraska's biggest weapon was their quarterbacks running the ball. You know, and if you can make that their biggest weapon, you've got a shot. And hold them to 17, as Ryan Day said, if somebody told him before the game, I guarantee you will hold them to 17, he would have signed on the dotted line. Clearly, you were impressed by the Ohio State receivers, Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith-Digba, for example, for 2. And I thought Justin Fields, 20 of 21, 2 touchdowns, ran for another. Had over 300 yards total offense. I think that pretty well sums it up for those guys.
I don't think there will be a rapid reaction brought to you by Byers Auto this season that will not include something about Justin Fields. He was magnificent and in complete control. You know, if Chris Olave, the one throw that was on the ground, was a big hit, could have been another completion. So I don't know if that's where you start, Berm, but almost every conversation about this team's potential is going to revolve around him.
For me, it's like, you know, I just want to go back to the start of the game, and it was sort of like that exhale feeling, you know, after 8, 9, 10 months of just pure emotion, pure adrenaline, pure like, are we going to get here? Are we going to play? Are we not? And then you come out and there's that cliche we've heard repeatedly. You have to bring your own energy. You have to create your own energy. And I just don't think the Buckeyes were able to do that in that first 7-8 minutes because it was weird. I mean, it was a weird feeling in the stadium. Nebraska scores on 3 plays on the opening drive. And you're like, oh, that was awkward. And it wasn't until Haskell Garrett came in the game, a guy that probably is seeing this game from an even way different perspective as far as the term fight goes than the rest of the guys on this team. He could have been dead 2 months ago.
It's not even hyperbole. That's the crazy part.
He brought some real energy to the defense. They started to get a little bit of pressure in the backfield, and Tim was right on the nail, though. I mean, the fact is the defense looks like it struggles, but that's because Nebraska decided to run the quarterback, and that's it. And I don't.
They were also running another quarterback.
Right, 2 quarterbacks, and I don't think the Buckeyes were prepared for that. I think they were looking for more of that spread stuff. Nebraska did not attempt to go to the outside of the field at all.
Very little.
And I don't think that a lot of teams are going to try that against Ohio State because if we're being honest, the middle of the defensive line looked a little suspect early. But, you know, as we said, once the second half came around, the defensive touchdown sort of was a nail in the coffin, and then you just sort of put it in cruise control.
I think it's an interesting point about bringing the energy. And, you know, we're going to talk a lot about the game and obviously what the roster looks like moving forward. That's a big part of this. But this is the first time for everybody in an empty Ohio Stadium. And this is going to be the case all year in the Big Ten. So you're going to have reps. Like, I don't think any of them could have tried to bring the juice and feel like they were getting it done. But you don't really know until you actually get that started and how it's going to be to open a game and it be quiet, or, you know, to hit that first big hit. So that's going to be a learning process, as it is in a number of different positions. As well, Tim.
Yeah, and you know, the only of the 4 guys we got to talk to after the game via Zoom, the only one who thought it wasn't weird was Wyatt Davis, you know, the right guard who left and then came back after the Big Ten revisited and reinstated this season. But yeah, I think we're all going to get used to it, though, one or other. It probably sounded crowd noise wise better on television than it did live.
It was super awkward. I don't mean to cut you off, but like if you're on the field and so when a big play happens in a real game, the crowd starts to crescendo, right? Yeah. And here, after the big play happened, they just put in some shout. So, like, if you're watching, it just happens after. So, a punt return, so I actually happened to be walking down the concourse to switch sides when the Seven Banks touchdown happened, and then I was watching on the monitors, and I'm like, oh crap, they just scored a touchdown because I heard the cheer as I was already starting to walk back. I'm like, this is
crazy.
Is super weird.
You know, Kerry Combs talked about that. I mean, he said the place would have been going bananas, and he is exactly right. And that's what home field advantage means. You know, when you can seize it, and yes, that was definitely missing. But I still saw guys make some damn good plays out there. I mean, not the least of which Haskell Garrett had a sack, and then he forced another sack off on the edge. In my opinion, that was the turning point of the game, though, that series of plays, because it gave Ohio State the ball back and it was able to drive down and score a touchdown just before halftime. And then they came back, and they scored 24 points in a row.
After they had to settle for a field goal just a few plays earlier.
But during that span was 24-point run, and Nebraska was done.
Yeah, and they were unsettled. I don't think it's unfair to say that the first half or the first 20 minutes were sloppy for Ohio State. And, Haskell Garrett's coming back from an injury. Marcus Hooker got the start at safety. That's the first time that he's been in that position to go out there. Sevyn Banks, that's his first start at cornerback. We know what he can do.
8 new starters on defense against 10 returning starters on offense for Nebraska is probably, and I guess I'll bite the bullet here when we're talking about like pregame predictions. These are probably things that could have been considered a slightly more, I guess, because
I wrote a story about it.
They're
remember?
just not as talented, even if they're veterans.
Which is why you see the gap as the game goes on.
Yeah.
But in that first few minutes, that first 10 minutes, and Ohio State had an opportunity. And I realize I'm cutting you guys off. I'm sorry. But
juiced up, man.
Yeah, you are juiced up.
It was 14-7, and Justin Fields was very upset they didn't go for it on 4th and 1 at their own 28-yard line.
Yes.
And came off the field sort of ticked off that they didn't go for it.
Yeah.
And then the next 2 times they were like, okay, go for it. And
they had already done it earlier in the game, like 4th and 5 driving. So that's
exactly.
He was used to that aggressive mindset. So
yeah, the quarterback may not think of it the same when he's on his own 28.
Who did he throw to on that 4th and 5?
Garrett
Wilson. How many passes did Garrett Wilson catch today?
7.
And just what we were talking about, I wrote a story about their 8 new starters on defense this week at Lettermen Row, because you knew that was going to be a factor in the first game without a doubt. Yeah. Playing a little tentative, the other team coming out aggressively, but like you said, they tightened the bolts.
Garrett Wilson in the slot is going to be a problem for the Big Ten. You can already see they talk all the time about that basketball spatial awareness. I don't even think it's that. He's big, he's fast, and you have great talent outside of him.
I'm going to sound like Tim May here.
Then he catches the ball.
I'm going to sound like a Tim May retread, but he is quick as a hiccup. Yeah. I mean, he gets open like that.
Yeah.
He gets open like that.
When you're talking about guys that, I think maybe it was in the second quarter. It was one of the early touchdown drives. It just had him running a drag across the middle of the field. And, like, what slot corner, if you're putting your third best cornerback, or if you're putting your safety, or God forbid, I've said this all week, a linebacker matched up on him, it's over. The play is over.
Yeah.
And Justin Fields knows that. And I think that Chris Olave is an incredible deep threat. We'll watch his health as the week goes on. He took one of about 75 hits to the head from Nebraska today. Olave's going to stretch the field, and he's going to open things up for Garrett Wilson to, I think, do crazy things statistically. And that relationship with him and Fields is going to be dangerous.
Here, obviously Ryan Day said after the game he did not believe there was any malintent by Nebraska on those plays. But I tell you what, Nebraska's coaches need to go back and reteach some things. He lost 2 big-time players
for all
the target. Another who almost
talk about how friendly these 2 teams are now.
Yeah.
It seems like Nebraska has not taught the new style of tackling, because there was a number of shots at the head.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why I don't buy it. Maybe it's not because it was malicious, but you get what you emphasize. And that's an old coaching adage. And you have multiple players leaving their feet, aiming at the head, which has not been legal in this sport for a long time. Anyway, that's over. You hope that Chris Olave is feeling fine heading into next week. It looked scary with that hit. But this, the other part of this was the late touchdown. Jack Miller, a little bit of a surprise to me, because going through pregame warmups, it looked to us like C.J. Stroud was taking every second-team rep ahead of Gunnar Hoke, ahead of Jack Miller. Then the game is over, and you put Jack Miller in for the last drive. I don't know if that's continuing to keep us guessing about where they are, but the other part, before you get into that, was Ryan Day apologized for them scoring, which I think is even more offensive to Nebraska. It was like, hey, sorry that you suck so much.
Our backup freshman quarterback was so good, we couldn't keep him.
And a walk-on running back.
And
you had the second, third, fourth string quarterback who's a true freshman, a walk-on running back, 5 different players on the offensive line, no starters at wide receiver. If you can't stop them from just running the ball, then you deserve to have a touchdown scored against.
By the way, I just checked my little list of guys I wanted to make sure we talked about, and the one guy we haven't yet, Steel Chambers. That sack back to the 1-yard line, Justin Fields endured, because let's face it, when you go against a 3-4 defense, they're playing games all day.
Let's back up even further for why they were in that situation, which was not the sack.
Yeah.
It was that somebody needs to not ever be at kickoff return ever.
Well, yeah, but you still don't let a guy come free right up the gut, I mean,
if you're on the 25, you're probably calling.
Yeah, you're right. But DeMario McCall did have a couple problems today catching kickoffs. But I digress, and you do too. Bottom line is they were playing all those games up front. The offensive line finally kind of got its act together good. But when you're going against a 3-4, you sometimes are going to give up what I call gash defensive plays. Yeah. But still, Chambers goes in there, 2 straight runs, gets them off the edge, draws one of those late hit head hit penalties. Next thing you know, they're off and running. I thought that was a very impressive interlude by Steel Chambers, who ends up being the 3rd string running back today.
I think you can tell how badly all of us have wanted to do a rapid reaction. I
mean, I could talk about a lot of things.
So much to say, so much that we learned about this team.
They scored 52, man.
Keep going. Like you talked about Jackson Smith and Jigba and that touchdown.
Yeah.
Like you could play your entire career and never have one that's as cool.
You've
as
seen
that.
one close to that.
Jackson Smith and Jigba showed parents
Michael Thomas
in the same series of plays today why you want your kid to never play football, and then why you want your kid to play football at Ohio State, because he almost got decapitated on one play.
Yes.
And then 3 plays later makes a touchdown catch that you will just not see a college football player make. And then let alone a freshman playing in his first game ever. Yeah. I mean, that catch was simply ridiculous.
Evan Spencer to Michael Thomas just before halftime in the against Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, the college football playoff championship run. It reminded me of that Incredible. Play. Gets his foot down. Even the officials were going, nah, he didn't do that.
His body was out of bounds. It wasn't a situation where the momentum was taking him.
Yeah.
His body was out of bounds, and he found a way.
I watched both.
Really remarkable.
Both officials in the back of the end zone consulted, and they both said there was no way, because you could tell where the rest of his body was.
Right.
That they didn't think there was any way he could have got his foot down, which he did. All right, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk. You brought up Steel Chambers. I think maybe the reason that he got a chance there in the second half was because Trey Sermon and Master Teague both struggled to get their footing a little bit. So concerned or not concerned with the running game, guys? Because we've seen this before, where just for week 1, things aren't perfect.
Here's what you'd be concerned about, and Wyatt Davis brought it up. I mean, there were Nebraska was pulling out all the stops up front. They were almost intent that Ohio State wasn't going to beat them running the ball, which is, when you looked at the wide receiver core, that might have been the wrong intent, malintent. But I digress. Bottom line is, they guessed right on a lot of running plays. I'm talking about Nebraska did. And then other times, there was just great effort, like following the pulling guard, number 99, I can't remember his name, followed White Davis one time on a pull play and just made the tackle from the backside. I mean, those are things you have to get cleaned up, because you always have to take account of a guy like that. But like he said, it was the first game for that full offensive line playing together against a team that schemed against them. Yeah. Trey Sermon and Master Teague III paid the price, but Master Teague III did get into the end zone twice. That's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm not going to say I'm concerned. I have concerns, as I said weeks ago. I don't know that coming off the injury that he had, that Master Teague is going to have the explosion that you need to get through the hole quickly in a league full of good athletes. I don't think the Buckeyes really wanted to have Justin Fields run the football today. That was clear. He handed it off on almost every single read play. I thought Trey Sermon did a really nice job in the third, fourth quarter when he got back on the field. You could see that he kind of has that extra gear. Yeah. And ultimately, to me, a lot of this is going to come down to what you said earlier. How do teams guard Garrett Wilson in the slot? Because if you're taking linebackers off the field to bring in a second, a nickel back or a fourth defensive back, all of a sudden Justin Fields in the running game is going to open up quite a bit. And there's too many things to do. And I don't want to use the old coaching adage, but the Buckeyes play Penn State next week. I don't think that there was an interest in revealing too much of what they want to do. And to me, this isn't a knock on anybody. Jack Miller played really well. I think people were probably like, whoa, that's
especially that run. One of the runs.
I don't know that he's going to be the backup all year, but the fact of the matter is, you have 2 guys that are in the same exact position, and you just kind of are going to give them this week's you.
I just think it's interesting. Everybody thought C.J. Stroud was going to be the first guy off the bench possibly, and that did not happen. That was very revealing to me. I mean, I don't,
I think it was meant to be revealing, but it was a trick, because now you keep C.J. Stroud in reserve for next week. I'm going to go full-on conspiracy theory with what I saw on
I just know the first guy to replace Justin Fields was Jack James Miller III.
Yeah, I can't actually argue that point.
And he played great. Honestly, I mean, he had command of the offense. He showed some athleticism.
He looked smooth out there.
I think that the important thing there for Ohio State, and I had a moment watching the game, and I was thinking back to last year's Penn State game when it's a meaningless play and Justin Fields is on the field running, gets hurt, and you're like, what are you doing? And then he got sacked on the last play that he was in today, and you're like, okay, everybody out.
That was almost, as they say, deja vu all over again.
Everybody out.
You're already up 45-7. What's he doing back in there?
Not necessarily.
Especially because they had backup offensive linemen in at that time. And to me, if Justin Fields is on the field,
then you need
all 5 of your starting offensive linemen.
I think there was something they were trying to get to in that realm, whether it was a Jameson Williams down the field, something they wanted to get to, and they didn't get to it, and they almost paid the price.
My only final word on the running back situation is that I still believe, and Berm, you alluded to this, the way that Trey Sermon finished, you started seeing him, I think, get a little more comfortable and show some more of the explosion that maybe Master Teague doesn't have. But you could win, I think, with either one. I have concerns that they are in this one series for this guy, one series for the next guy, and rotating back and forth, which we just saw them learn this lesson 2 years ago with Mike Weber and J.K. Dobbins, where it didn't help either one. Whoever they want to lead, I think they have to pick it and let that guy become the main back.
I think they came out of camp after school practices leading up to this game was not a clear-cut number one, is what I truly believe. And number two, I think you might still see it again. I thought Master Teague III and Trey Sermon, when they weren't getting hit in the backfield or right at the line of scrimmage, actually ran fairly well on occasion.
Yeah,
that's their big bugaboo coming out of this game was some guys they let come free, offensive line let come free into the fray. And that's what they're going to be working on as much as anything this week.
That's my concern with Master. Is coming off the Achilles. Does he have the gear to get through the line quickly? Because you do play teams like Penn State, and they're aggressive. They're going to blitz a ton. They're going to
that
send
6-yard touchdown run he had though.
If he gets through, to the hole, he's still willing and able to do some damage.
I just think that
it might take him an extra second to get rolling.
And
rolling.
You don't want to be in his way at the goal line.
Right.
No,
that's for sure.
Was obviously a message. And again, it's one game. We're not going to make definitive judgments off of this.
It's one game. It's the greatest day of our lives.
We do get to make some snap judgments, and we always do that on Rapid Reaction at Lettermen Row. Thank God football is back. Ohio State has one in the bag now, 52-17 over Nebraska. They play Penn State next week. A whiteout, I guess. An empty Halloween primetime game. That's Tim May. That's Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward. Felt really good to be back here at Ohio Stadium. A lot more coverage of this Buckeyes win coming for you at LettermenRow.com. We will see you there.